Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Gregory Bloomfield. I hope you're doing well. Listen, I hope you had a great Thursday, and I hope you're having a great week. This is growth. This is a new season. This is something new we're doing here at the Motivation Moments podcast. This is the first time that we're doing a show on Thursday, and we're doing a panel discussion. It's a special night. So we're obviously the theme for this month is domestic violence awareness, but we wanted to give it a special twist. We've been doing individual interviews and conversations, but this time around, this is going to be women's motivation moment. This is going to be a panel of women who you've seen on the show and some that you may not have met. So we're going to be discussing the topic of how to deal with a narcissist. Again, my name is Gregory Bloomfield. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you could do me a great favor, can you like and share, and most importantly, subscribe to this broadcast? We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, and I believe tonight this is the first time we're on LinkedIn as well. So share this broadcast. It will bless your life. It will give you good information. And if you have a woman in your household or wherever you're watching, particularly millennials and teenage daughters, they need to hear this information, because I believe that with this information, it may save your life and also will be a blessing to them to avoid some of the pain that some other women have had in terms of dealing with narcissism. So without further ado, I want to tell you something. I'm not going to be the one moderating this. It's going to be my good friend, my big sister, the producer of the Motivation Moments podcast, my good friend, my big sis, Dr. Alonda Kusamo. So if she comes up, hey.
Hello. Good evening.
Good. Yeah, exactly. How you doing today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. See, there really is someone behind the scenes. And
I exist. I
exist. Not only does she produce this show, but she has her own network of shows on the Lonnie B Network. Can you tell us a little bit about the Lonnie B Network before we continue?
Sure. Lonnie B & Co. actually was started because I began to produce shows for individuals who had something that they wanted to share to the people, not just within their community, but amongst the masses that were global. And so from that, and all of the individuals that I work with, they have something to inspire, to empower, to engage, and to also share with individuals the goodness of what the actor of life could be, or how they've overcome, or how the trajectory of their life was changed. So that's a little bit about Lonnie B & Co. Right now, we currently have 5 shows. One new person will be starting on the 23rd, adding to the family. So I'm really, really excited about it. And there's always opportunity. And what I do is I bring your vision to reality, and I give it to you the way God inspired you. And so I just bring it to life for you.
Awesome.
So that's me.
And let me tell you something. She does amazing work. She pushes me. She slaps me around. No, I'm kidding. But in love, she's not. as a big sister, yeah, it's a tender slap in Jesus' name. But one of the things she does, she's an awesome graphic designer as well. All the flyers that you see, many of you get sick of my posts, but you're like, it's really nice though. So when I'm in your DMs talking about flyers of the show or putting it on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and in WhatsApp, this is the woman right here who does the wonderful flyers. And if you want to get beautiful flyers for your program, for your church, this is the woman to go to. She has clients all over the world, literally. So she does amazing work. But we have a special night tonight, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And I'm excited.
Yes. So Dr. Kusamo is going to be the one moderating today. And we also, just before we bring up the panel today, I just want to let you know that we've been talking about domestic violence awareness, and I know many and all of our guests have been amazing, from Dr. Melissa Tony, from Adenike Johnson to Christine Aguilera. And we'll continue to have quality guests and amazing stories. But I know for some of you, it's going to be a little bit triggering, or you might need to talk to somebody, because we're dealing with the tough subject of domestic violence, and not all violence is physical. So I asked a friend of mine who is a therapist, a Christian therapist and a woman of color, to make her services available if you want to talk to anybody, right? If you want to talk to her, her name is Jessica Kennedy, and she is an entrepreneur, and she has a company called Innovo Life Health. And what we're going to be doing is, while we're doing the broadcast, if you feel that, hey, you know what, there's some areas where I need to work, please call her number right here. And she has a website that you can also go to learn more about her services. So we felt to be responsible if we're dealing with a tough topic. There are people that may need to reach to someone, and I know that many of our audience is of color, and they would feel comfortable with speaking with a woman of color in a situation, someone who can relate. So I went to my friend Jessica, and she's willing to talk, and she's licensed in the state of Maryland. So we're not just giving you some church sister who got a whole bunch of bad war stories. She's legit. She got what they say on it. She got paperwork. Yeah. So
she has receipts, Gregory. She has receipts.
Receipts and paperwork. She got her degrees. Yes, sir. So listen, let's introduce our guest. Enough of me. You're not gonna hear much of me today. But I want to introduce our guest. First of all, I want to introduce her on the panel. She blessed us, Dr. Melissa Tony. So we'll pull them up one by one. So Dr. Melissa Tony. Amen.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. All right. And then we're going to pull up, we'll see her in a moment. We'll have Adenike Johnson, my friend of many years. Hey, we stay young forever. Ain't that right, Adenike? Yes, sir. And if you know anything about the Lonnie B Network, we have a show called Dear Life After. We have the host of that show, Miss Roslyn. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Last but not least, I talked to you about a book, Breaking the Silence. You see that name right on the bottom, Dr. Paulette Harper. You turn, you see my big head right there, but the name on the book is Dr. Paulette Harper. We have her in the house. Good evening, Dr. Paulette. All right. So let us begin by getting me out of here. So I'm going to go backstage, and I'm going to let Dr. Alonda take over. So I'll be listening.
Thank you, Gregory. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Motivation Moments, the women's version. Tonight we are talking about how to deal with the narcissist, how to deal with the narcissist. And so the ladies on this panel tonight each are survivors of domestic violence, and they're going to share with you a little bit about their story, but we're really going to talk about the topic tonight, how to deal with the narcissist. Because so often we think we know the true meaning of a narcissist, but we only know the definition that society gives us. But these ladies tonight are going to give you a different spin on how you actually can identify a narcissist, and if they have encountered one, if that was their situation, or if they know someone who has. But just to talk a little bit about how do you deal with that narcissist? How do you identify it? How do you actually deal with it while you're in it? And how do you actually prepare yourself to walk away from that narcissist? So, ladies, I thank you all tonight for tuning in. It is truly an honor and pleasure to be moderating with you tonight. And to everyone who's out there tuning in tonight, I so thank you, and we celebrate you, and we thank you for tuning in. And as Gregory stated before, please be so kind to go ahead and tag a friend, text a friend, tweet a friend, and ask them to sign in. Now, if they don't, it doesn't matter because there's going to be a replay. So you can always still share it with them. And as Gregory also stated, if there's someone who needs to talk to someone, we'll have the number running across the bottom of the screen. But at the conclusion of the show, we will also put it in the comments, the complete details and information about the individual who you can reach out to for assistance. So thank you. So ladies, now I turn it over to you. I would like for you just to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then just a little bit about how you became a survivor. And I would like to go ahead and let's start with Dr. Melissa Tony.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Tony. I'm also known as the Community Connect. I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization called Serving with a Purpose, where we build and implant resource centers inside of schools and districts to provide tangible and intangible resources for students in need to help them academically excel. I am also a domestic violence, I call it an overcomer. I did survive, but I overcame that thing. And so just a little bit about that. I was in a relationship with someone who literally almost succeeded at taking my life. My throat was cut. I had to receive 17 stitches from one side to the next. And I was also stabbed repeatedly in my arm. And so, as with a lot of domestic overcoming situations, it was a build into, right? The abuse started very subtle and it quickly over time escalated into what I say is the event that overall could have cost me my life. And so, just every day I'm reminded, not just by my scars, but also the experience of just how God kept me and how I overcame that situation.
Thank you, Dr. Tony. I can tell you this. Well, your scars are definitely beautiful to us. So thank you so much for sharing. Miss Adenike.
Hi, well, good night. Um, just a little bit about myself. I have vocal cord dysfunction, which I developed when I got COVID in 2020. It's unfortunately a somewhat permanent condition. But regarding domestic violence, um, in my early years, I was raped by a close friend who I went to church with, and that spiraled into personalities of how I chose my first marriage and how I treated my children while they were growing up. So that's something that I would be heavily discussing for tonight regarding recognizing the narcissist in me and how that translated to my parenting style and how I have raised my children.
Thank you, Adenike.
Yeah.
And Rosalind.
Good evening. My name is Rosalind Long, and I am the host of a podcast called Dear Life After, where we are trying to impact lives, where people are telling stories, giving their testimonies in regards to their life after. Some people have domestic violence, some people have different types of abuse. You have prison, you have divorce. We have all types of Dear Life After. Uh, and I am also in the process of starting a nonprofit to help women who are returning from federal prison to reintegrate into society. So I am also a overcomer of domestic violence as well. So, and I'm just glad to be here and be able to share.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rosalind. And Dr. Paulette Harper.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. I am Dr. Paulette Harper. I am also known as the Story Activator. I am a self-publishing coach to many nonfiction authors. I'm also a TV host of Now Faith Is TV and an award-winning author as well. And I'm coming on here to talk about, my spin on domestic violence. But when it comes to narcissism, it is relating to someone who was, or still is actually, a close, someone that I really loved. Still love them, but still have to deal with their disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. Perfect segue. You said something that was really interesting is that you still love them, but you had to deal with their narcissistic ways, right? So actually, because you actually ended with that, I would like to ask you a question. How would you define a narcissist?
Well, it took me a while to even realize that this person had personality disorder. I thought it was, something else. So just based on the behavior of this individual, very selfish and self-centered, someone who was very extremely manipulative, um, always wanted to have their way, and then also wanted to be the have all the attention, given to them. And so being that they were very controlling, but very slick about it, sly about it, and so, having to deal with somebody who you had to learn that was dealing with personality disorder was a learning process for me, but it was something that I needed to deal with.
So would you say that the personality disorder defines the narcissism in the individual, or what was the identifier for you?
You know what? What the identifier for me was the fact of their constant behavior change. Because they were very manipulative, I knew that there was moments where, and I had to realize this, that they were just pretending to love me just to get what they wanted out of me. And so coming from that angle, and then realizing that this individual only loves themselves, and their capacity to love someone else is very little, if any, because they're so self-centered and focused on what can I get out of this relationship that's going to benefit me. And if I can't get anything out of it, then I really don't need them in my life.
Ladies, would you say that that's true in your instances as well?
I would say so. I do want to piggyback off of something that that you said repeatedly. I think that we live in a time where there's this wave that people ride with, kind of labeling disorders, right? Um, Narcissistic, I've heard that so loosely done. I'm literally like probably going to be a student forever, but I'm also currently in the process of getting a master's in professional counseling. And so I went through I've taken an addiction counseling class. I've taken quite a few different classes that talk to personality disorders. And so a lot of the times you have to be very careful with trying to use clinical jargon, because actually narcissistic personality disorder is really a thing, right? It's not just a person is manipulative, and sometimes people can show characteristics of other personality disorders that is not necessarily narcissistic. I totally agree with Dr. Harper in regards to some of the manipulation that shows up. Love bombing is also a huge one. When someone comes off really strong in the beginning, portraying the relationship to be very strong and very forthcoming, and you barely even known this person like a week. Those are also some flags that can be thrown, because typically narcissists, they have to have things perceived a certain way in order to make themselves feel better. self-esteem is pretty low. So in order for them to make themselves feel high, they have to always perceive things to be a certain way. And so I want to point that out because like people loosely use that word all the time. um, I was joking with my daughter because like now the new wave of personalities is like zesty. You know, they're calling men zesty. Like this is the zesty area. So it's every now and then like it'll change. So I
Yeah.
always like to put that out when you are talking about narcissism. You definitely want to make sure that you factor in clinician conversation when you're trying to diagnose someone's personality when it comes to being narcissistic, because some of that stuff can also blend. And just to kind of add this one thing, and I'll let the next person talk. Narcissistic personality is also sometimes tied to other types of things like substance abuse, alcohol abuse. So you always look for things like that too when you start trying to really diagnose somebody who is narcissistic. It's not always just a one-dimensional thing.
Thank you. Wow, it's interesting you said it's not a one-dimensional, that there's levels to it, right? And so, Rosalind, what would you say in regards to what has been shared about narcissistic behaviors?
For me, I think more in the lines of one of the characteristics for is manipulation, uh, is what I had more experience with, because they want to mask, they want to be the center of attention, they want to control the situation and things of that nature. And so that was the key factor or the flag for me having that characteristic, because that's a big issue, because like I say, the manipulation is very subtle. So it might take you a while to kind of catch on to, oh, wait a minute. But that's my experience with it.
Mhm.
Thank you. And Adenike?
Well, speaking regarding parenting styles, I found that over the years, because of the traumas I experienced growing up, I transferred a lot of these negative mindsets in my parenting style. For example, even in friendships where you're gathering with a girlfriend and there's manipulation in the conversation to have the outcome show up a certain way, and the girlfriend will support these type of conversations rather than to come out and say, you know what, I don't think what you're saying is fair to the other person, but instead there's a ride with the conversation. Yeah, yeah, I feel you. And so, with regards to my parenting style, I found that in certain cases, I manipulated children to, get certain outcomes out of them as, they're growing. Like my son, he's 26 now, and I have had to learn to step back and respect his boundaries. Before, it was a matter of, it was my way or the highway. And that type of mindset going into, parenting for, adult life is a negative setup for them personally, for my opinion. And so, I try to focus on the things that I have done to kind of negatively impact the children so that when they do come into relationships with other people, they're able to recognize these behaviors and not continue the cycle that I had started.
Alonda, I think you're on mute.
I am, y'all. I'm so used to being behind the scenes. I'm sorry. Adenike, that's right. And I actually heard you before in your interview. And one of the things you said was that you had to make sure that your kids didn't gravitate to that same behavior from your abuser. And so when we talk about that, you know, it impacts our family, it impacts us because it impacts the people or affects the people around us. And we don't realize it because sometimes in the midst of us in the middle of that relationship, it actually becomes our normal way of living because of the fear, the intimidation, the manipulation, the deception that that person puts on us, that we don't realize that, wow, this is actually, I've created this as a norm. Watch this. And we get mad and upset because the people around us are trying to tell us different, and we're defending our abuser until one day the light bulb comes on and it says, you know what? Hey, this is not love. This is not care. This is not an individual who has my best welfare and well-being at heart. So when we talk about each of you and what you have gone through, I would like to ask you, Rosalind, what was the hardest and the most difficult of being with a narcissist individual?
Well, when I think about the manipulation part, this is what made it hard for me because you're trying to manipulate me in regards to uh, my family situation. You know, like I know that there was a situation where this guy was just like so jealous of my family. It was like unreal. I mean, like I never experienced anything like that. Like we've always been very, very close, me and my sisters and you know, my mom and my aunt. I mean, and that just like when I say burnt him up, you know, he was like, well, y'all can't move without her saying something. Or I mean, it was just like crazy, crazy, you know. So for me, that was the hardest part because you have this person that you're in this relationship with and that you care about, and then you know you got your family, and you know for me, at the end of the day, they're going to be there. My family is going to be there regardless of whatever, you know. As they say, you know, men can go and come. I mean, he wasn't my husband, so I mean, and even if he was, but your family is supposed to be forever. So that was
So
really
you said a
hard.
key word. Mhm.
So that was hard for me.
And you said a
I
key
mean, it
word.
was
You
just like,
said that's suppose. So was there ever a point in that relationship where you actually set your family aside to appease him?
I think that in the relationship, trying to appease him, there probably were situations that maybe I kind of pulled back or made adjustments because I'm in this relationship. I wanted to work, but I also got my family and I love them. So yeah, I'm going to say probably not necessarily put aside, but yeah, probably absolutely there were some made some concessions, if you want to call it that, so to speak. Absolutely. You're on mute again. You're on.
Okay, sorry. So Rosalind, you all make this so easy for me. So Rosalind just talked about the importance of family. And I know that definitely Dr. Tony, Rosalind, Adenike, Dr. Harper, I'm not sure, but I know that you all have very close relationships with your family. Now, Dr. Tony and Adenike, I do know that you both were in your situations. Your abusers were close to your families. What was that like? Whoever would like to go first.
okay if I go? Yeah? Okay.
Go ahead, Adenike.
Okay. Now, Dr. Kusimo, I had to go to therapy, okay? And part of that, I learned that there's a patriarchal mindset in my family. We come from struggle. We moved from Jamaica to Canada as immigrants. And the mindset that I had was, shh, take it, bear through. And so as I grow up in Canada with this mindset, you tend to have a high tolerance for people who are very abusive, even within your family. And because some family members help you, this tie to the acceptance of the help comes with a long string of tolerance. Now, practicing this, you end up being around other people externally outside your family who are mentally abusive, physically abusive. And because you have this high tolerance, you invite them without boundaries. And so was my situation. When I got raped, it was a family friend. It was a close friend at church and trusted. And from that trauma, I was like, how do I get back my power? No one could control me. And it's this mindset that I practiced, that I translated not only in my parenting, but also in a slight way I accepted more abuse unconsciously. And that's how I ended up in my first marriage was mentally abusive. To the point where I moved from Canada to the US from my family and lived in a situation where I was alone. I didn't have no family. I had no friends. It was just me, him, and the children. And that was a system that just went downhill fairly quickly. So now here I was pleasing one person and then hiding from the family because now they rescue me. I open up myself to another plethora of abuse. So there's this dynamic where I need to control the outcome and rectify my own personal gain. And with doing so, I internally became somebody who lacked emotional intelligence, who was neglectful to the kids, and who accepted friendships with people who just said, "Oh yeah, you're being abused. You're doing this. Oh, that's horrible. That person is doing to you," rather than correcting me and telling me, "No, you need help. You need therapy." And it's on this journey where I literally had to cut everyone off. My mom, my sister, my friends. It was just me. It was just God and my therapist and a big pillow for tears. And in doing so, I was able to recognize these demons that was just lurking in my 40s, trying to engage with me in my 50s to come. And there was a point where I just had to say, you know what? No, you're not going to join me any further. And it's in doing so that instead of pointing out the perpetrator, I had to look at the practice of these tendencies, like Dr. Sweeney was saying, instead of coming out and saying that's what it is, you have to look at the tendencies that you're practicing that you are going to deliver to the next generation as their own foundation to either build or destroy the next generation.
Wow. Dr. Harper, I see you shaking your head. You want to share?
Yeah, sure. When you were asking about family dynamics and stuff, so mine wasn't a relationship with a male. This was a female in my family, and so for me, it was once I started learning about what a narcissist was, I began to kind of see the reasons why they were doing certain things. And so for me, it was when I realized who I was dealing with and the spirit behind what I was dealing with. When I decided to remove the individual from, because the person lived with me. And so when I finally decided to remove the individual from my home, that's when I learned about this narcissist supply, and where they go to other people that they know they can manipulate, Wow. And it got to be real deep because the individual did just that, went to my family members and began to lie about me, and they began to project that they were a victim, And so, turned the whole situation around and make them look as though they were the ones that were suffering. And so what ended up happening was my family, because I know that it's a spirit behind it and it's a manipulative spirit, I know that for my family, they were so moved by her and sided with her that it caused a division between me and my family members. And when you have that dynamics where it's somebody that you love, and then they go and lie on you to make them look good and you look bad, and then your family members take their side, that's another level that I got to deal with, And so I had to watch all of that and see all of that and still deal with the people that I love, So for me, it was the fact that I have to deal with somebody that has been in my home, has been in and out of my life, because this is how they operate. And so, and then coming to the grips of, okay, well, I don't have a relationship with this individual anymore. And now they have tainted my relationship with my family. And that has been hard for me to deal with, but yet I have to deal with it because I know that, as I said, the spirit behind it. And I have to take a different approach when it comes to the spiritual side of it, that I know that my wrestle is not against flesh and blood, but it's against principalities and powers. And I know that I have to take a different approach when it comes to dealing with that particular spirit and how I'm going to live my life apart from this individual and my family.
Yeah, you have to cut off.
And I had to do that. And I did. I had to cut the individual off because I saw, again, another pattern that they were going through, And so when I finally cut them off, that's when they went to my family, So for me to have to live through that, walk through that, but I've just learned that God's grace is sufficient for me. And I've just learned to how to deal with life. And I know how to deal with the individual when and if they come back into my life.
Yes.
Did we lose our host?
I think we lost her and Melissa, it looks like, right? Okay.
There she go.
This network, when there is something to be said that actually speaks against the enemy, he just will do whatever he wants to do. But you know what? If I lose myself again, y'all just keep going, because I'm telling you, nobody can see. here's the key. As long as we were talking about men being narcissists, it was fine, right? Because here's the reality. That's common. Like Dr. Tony said, we've taken it and we use it so loosely. But when we start touching on the core that Dr. Harper was talking about, that when you have to deal with a family member that's a narcissist, now that's a whole different conversation, because now we're not just only talking about I love you, you love me, we're intimate, we're married, we're engaged, we're this. Now we're talking about someone that you have the same blood running through your veins, running through you have the same family members, and you're having to deal with the narcissistic behavior. And like Dr. Harper said, she had to take the low road. She had to take the low road in this situation. She had to be lied on, talked about, you know, probably called everything, lost family members that were close to her, all because of the trick of the enemy that he uses someone in your family to divide you, only to accomplish what he wants. And in the end, the family's raveled. We now have to be restored. How do we restore it? And then leading into my next question, how in these situations, and I'll start with Dr. Tony, how in these situations, at any point, did you say to yourself, it's not me. It's really not me. And then before you could say it's not me, you had to say, what am I doing wrong? What was that like? And ladies, please engage. You don't have to wait for me to call you out. This is the actual conversation, because people really need to hear this, because we don't know the true way to identify a narcissist. Dr. Tony?
I'm going to say this. Y'all, Satan was trying to shut me up because I was literally listening, right? And I'm like, okay, when it's my turn, like I was really led by the Holy Spirit to say what you asked, right? And all of a sudden my whole computer crashed. But I wanted to say, and then I'll move into the question that you just asked me, Dr. Kusimo, is one of the things, just to kind of piggyback on the original question that you asked us not too long ago, with the family dynamic and with my abuser being someone who was very familiar with my family dynamics and my family members, he used that to his advantage. So it's kind of like, you know, when you know a lot about an inside situation, you kind of use that to play off on how you want to control. And so even kind of bleeding into the question you're asking now about, you know, like, when was I like, am I the problem? Or, you know, like, it's really not me. Another thing that kind of helped me after the abuse, after a lot of the trauma, because the thing is, once I experienced that narcissistic personality disorder, the physical abuse, and so verbal abuse, it's like I started to attract other forms of abuse after that. And kept running into the same situation. So it wasn't until I went through counseling that a lot of my aha moments started to happen. Originally, when the abuse started and when I encountered the whole narcissistic situations, a lot of it stemmed from some things that I personally were suffering with. I'm the oldest of four. And so in my household, I came from a 2-parent household, a Christian household. And so in my family dynamic, I was the oldest, right? So I was the leader, the example setter. And so my parents didn't tell me this particular thing, but a lot of the times growing up, what that translated to me was perfection, right? I felt like I had to be perfect. I had to get it right. I had to, and it wasn't a bad thing that was said to me, but my interpretation kind of led me down a road of people pleasing. Not feeling if I didn't get it right all the way the first time, like I did something wrong. And so when I started to get into intimate relationships, if he got upset, it's like, what did I do to cause it? Like, what did I say? What did I, not understanding that those behaviors just weren't okay. And it wasn't until I did suffer from the physical abuse that I had never encountered ever. I've never seen my dad hit my mom, never saw my dad even so much as really raise his voice to my mom. That I started to sit back and I'm like, wait a minute, something in this situation is not right, right? I should never be slapped because my response to you is not what you want to hear. I should never be punched because my response, or verbally degraded because I said something that you didn't want. So I think after that went on for so long, I couldn't really put a name to like all of that I just explained. That was kind of discovered through therapy, which I would encourage anybody, not just for just things you've been subjected to, but also just kind of coming to understand a lot of the ways that we think and stuff that we do that sometimes stems from our childhood. We just haven't connected the dots. Um, but it wasn't until I kind of went through that whole transition that I could actually put a name and a thing to what I knew was not okay. But the whole time, um, I knew it wasn't okay, but again, with struggling from things personally myself, self esteem and just people pleasing and other things, I was questioning originally, like, could I have said that different? Should I have done that? Maybe that made him mad, those type of things were definitely thoughts throughout the process.
Right. You talked about the process. Rosalind, can you tell us how you escaped your narcissist?
I just left. I mean,
What?
it was no thinking to it. I mean, there was no thinking to it or anything of that nature, whatsoever. It was just a matter of, okay, well, it's time for this to be over with, so
But it was that easy?
pretty much that's just how that. Well, I think it was that easy for the simple fact that I was at the point of, this is enough. Like, this is I'm at my breaking point. So I'm just going to leave, so to speak. I can no longer endure this. Okay, so there was a situation, because I've had two narcissists. So we'll talk about one
Wow.
of them. So I was in a situation. Yeah. So I was in a situation where we had a disagreement. And so in that disagreement, per se, it was just a matter of, um, the tension was high. So when the tension was high, it was just a matter of, okay, so I have to do something different at this point. So when I decided to do something different at that point, then that's when I just decided, hey, this is it.
Wow.
It was a matter, I did have to call family members over, because I didn't want it to be a volatile situation, for
Mhm.
me per se. And at the time, it was even a little different because I've had some other things going in my life that I didn't want it to affect. So I've had a past with um, the law, so to speak. So I knew that this particular person would use that against me. And that's exactly what happened. So that's why I had to call family members over and make sure things didn't go ugly, anything like that. So it was like, hey, it's time to go. I mean, so I left at that time with whatever I could take with me and just left.
So, to the other ladies, how would you say, or what would you say to someone who's in a situation, they're living with a narcissist?
Mm.
What would you say to that individual because they've had enough, but because of the manipulation because of the deception. Let me say this, that manipulation can be nobody else will want you. You used up damaged goods. You're fat. You got X amount of kids. Nobody's going to want you. So you might as well stay here because I'm the best thing that you can have. What would you say to that individual who's in that situation? How do they escape the narcissist?
Dr. Kusma, I want to say this too, just a little spin on also the play on emotion. Sometimes they put it on themselves. I know that was one of the things for me, you don't love me, right? If you leave, or, this hurts me. So it was a lot of feeling for myself of like, I don't want to hurt this person, or I don't want to be the person that further causes another drop of something that's going wrong in their life. So it was that guilt tripping also that was spinning around in circles. But unlike Rosalind, which I mean, hey, like that is amazing. I wasn't strong enough to do that. Literally almost losing my life. And I actually, like her, experienced it twice. The second time it ended in complete heartbreak. I was completely devastated when that relationship was over. And I would, my encouragement to someone that's in that situation is to, and it's not always easy, right? I think we encourage therapy a lot, but I know how integral it can be, because sometimes people invest that, they really lean into friends and family. And the reality is, my relationships with friends were destroyed because of those experiences too. That can be a huge weight on someone that's not equipped to handle that, right? They don't know how to direct, how to guide, what to say. They're just kind of like your secret holder, and they're suffering the way you're suffering because there's nothing anyone can do about it. And so my encouragement is always going to be therapy, not because that's a profession that I'm going in, or it's something that I experienced and I saw how it impacted what I was experiencing. And it helped me have tools on how to navigate, not only to never experience it again, but also to just be educated on what it looked like.
If I could chime in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in too on that. Yeah, so you asked about, was it difficult? How do you deal with it? And was it difficult to come to that decision? Because this individual was living with me, it was difficult for me to remove them, to ask them to leave, because there was another little one that was living in my house as well. And so I had to think about the relationship that I knew wasn't going to happen because I decided to remove the other individual. So that was very difficult for me. So that's another layer that I had to deal with, the consequences of my decision, knowing that I had to do it, but also the consequences of it, that this other little person was going to be affected by it as well. And so when I saw that, for this individual, this was something that behavior that they started having early on, like in their 20s. Okay. And so this individual over the years kept developing these, patterns of behavior. And when I finally recognized who I was dealing with, what I was dealing with, and what my life needed to be without this individual, those are hard decisions that you got to make, because it's not just you dealing with it; it's other people as well. And so I'm still, after all of these years, still praying and and believing God to turn the situation around in my family, because that is still something that hovers over my family, because my family don't want to admit their part in it, for being the people that kind of pacified the situation and took a stand against it or against me on it. And so I still have to deal with that. And so, for me, having to come to grips with the consequences of me making a decision like that, but knowing that if I had to do it again, I would still do it the same way.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone has any regrets when they come out. Maybe the initial, because it's like the absence of that behavior. Remember, because it became part of your norm, but the absence of that behavior. And then finally, one day you wake up and say, you know what? I'm really free. I'm free of this. We do have one question. Sammy Sam said, hi. Would you say most domestic abusers are narcissists or personality disorder? Adenike,
Now,
would you take
I'm not a doctor,
Oh,
but I would definitely say that there's going to be a mixture, because there's something definitely going wrong with an abuser, so to speak, within them, because they're going to have issues in regards to whether they have suffered some type of childhood trauma in regards to that they've been dealing with, whether that was seeing parents deal with domestic violence, or other things that has happened to them in their life. I don't think that somebody just woke up one day and said, oh, this is how I want to be. There are underlying things that have happened to them, definitely not making any excuses for them. but I do think that there are things that when you sit back and reflect, like after you're out of a situation and you can think clearly, then you kind of evaluate. Well, at least for me, I try to reevaluate and look at the situation. Okay, so what were the flags? What did I know in regards to this, to their family dynamics, to their childhood, to things that has happened to them or didn't happen to them, and then you can kind of piece together. I'm not a professional in regards to a therapist or something of that nature, but still, knowing so you can recognize those things and know when you move forward in your life in other relationships what to look for.
Yes.
And that's just my opinion about it.
Within my first marriage, my mother-in-law was, she had narcissistic tendencies. Let me explain. She didn't like that her son married me. And so took me aside and said, if I had all the power, I would have him divorce you. So, first thing is, step back and understand that I cannot love my neighbor as I love myself if I do not learn to love myself. And when you take a perspective of self-compassion, now you can say, okay, what situation am I in? Because I was in the US, my family wasn't with me. My husband didn't love me at the time when we were married, and his mother didn't like me. So here I was in a very toxic situation and trying to cope. And these things, going through that, divorce at the time, I carried it further with me without showing myself self-compassion. And so you end up dealing with people that gaslight you, and something is wrong, but they're like, well, maybe you're just making it up, maybe it's in your head. When you're intelligent, you understand what's happening. And here you are practicing emotional neglect, not only to yourself, but to your children. You need to step back, look at the person that you're with, and say, okay, God, I know you want me to love them, but this is destroying my capability to show and bear the fruit of the Spirit. And when I started approaching life in that manner, things started to unfold in the sense where, okay, how do I bear the fruit of the Spirit? How do I love? How do I experience these things? And so you go and you get the tools you need to build up the self so that you can love and show yourself compassion so that it can spill onto other people. And as it spills and they're not soaking up the spill, a different dynamic kicks in now where, okay, because the thing is that you cannot change people. You cannot control people. You cannot. When my son told me, Mom, no, he told me no to something else. And normally I'll be like, well, I try to use my little emotion, my little manipulation, and mommy, and I suffered and I went through this and breastfed. No, this is my boundary, Mom. You need to respect it. You know what? I had to respect it. And so I want to encourage women that we're coming into being mother-in-laws soon. Our kids are going to marry other people. How are you going to treat them? How are you going to interact with their families that they integrate with? And that's why you have to come here to focus on you and do some inner work. Let the Holy Spirit work on you, because now, once I did the work, Dr. Christmas, I'm telling you, it was purifying in the sense where my eyes were open and the boundaries started to fall into place. And love that I had for myself set up these parameters where you start seeing not sheep, but wolves. The wolves coming at you. So because your eyes are open, because the Holy Spirit is now feeding you with discernment, because you took the time to learn to see and focus on your own personality, the things that you need to heal within, so that you can now love your neighbor as you love yourself. When my daughter gets a boyfriend, I want her to see him as God sees him first. And it's important to see, is this a wolf or a sheep? Now, if he's a sheep and she's been a wolf, she can call herself out. She's not going to be like, oh, like the new age thinking where, oh, I'm bad and bougie. No, I don't want it to be that way, because now she has to raise a family. She has to take care of the extent of her generation to come. And so in doing so, I encourage people to step back, consider therapy, and spend time with God. Let him work on you. And when I cut my family off, it wasn't to be mean, Dr. Harper. It wasn't to be mean, and I know exactly where you're coming from, because I had a family member that was just so toxic. But in separating myself from the cultural mindset, the church mindset, and my very own mindset, I was able to see the mindset that God wanted me to have, so that I can actually love myself unconditionally and show this to other people with boundaries that are healthy.
Right.
No, you
And
can't.
I remember when Gregory interviewed you, one of the things you said is that you actually love the person you are, and now you can be a mother and not a monster. And that's, those are powerful words, because we don't realize, because we're so engulfed in those situations, that we can't hear the outside noise that's trying to save us. We can't hear the individual saying, hey, you deserve better. I look at each of you individually, and you're not ugly. You're smart, you're beautiful, you're intelligent. And it's like, when I see you, it's like, what goes in the back of the mind of a woman who's in that situation, to say, how did you get there? right? So, but now that when you were there, everything was stripped of you. Your confidence, your tenacity, your zeal for life. It is actually stripped from you. So again, to that lady who's in this situation, how do you actually, what words, Dr. Harper, would you say to that woman who's watching now, who's saying, I am in this situation. I'm really having to sneak to watch this because I'm in fear that he will think that it's going to be a trigger if he catches me watching it. What do you say to that woman who wants to get out, but she's suffocating and she can't even come up for enough air to even muster up the strength to get out?
Yeah, what I would say to her and anybody listening, that you are worth it. You really are worth investing in yourself to remove yourself from the situation, because there is really something better and greater that God wants for you. And you have to realize that, one, you're not the problem. It's the individual and how they perceive and how they see themselves and how they want to invoke that upon you. But you, as an individual who is the victim of it, you have to realize that you're worth removing yourself from it, because your life can be so much better without the toxic environment that you're in. And the mindset has to be there. You have to have a mindset shift, knowing that God wants better for you. You are worth so much more. And that there is something else that God, or someone else that God wants you to be with. But you have to become a better version of yourself in this whole process. So that's what I would say. Remove yourself from it, realize that you're worth so much more, and that there is a better version of you that needs to come out.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Rosalind?
Absolutely know that you are enough. You don't need someone to validate you. So, that manipulation about, you're not this, you're not that, maybe they're saying you're not anything without me, so to speak. you know, take some time, get with God, and know that, love yourself. I think that so often, I think that was probably the hard part, for me, is just knowing that I didn't love myself enough at the time, you know. So just, love on you. Know that you're loved. And like she said, I mean, you're worth it. So you have to love you enough to go ahead and do something different. It's easier said than done, but it is definitely worth it. You are definitely enough to do that. And it is with you. I mean, definitely seek help. I mean, and I know in our culture, therapy is a taboo, so to speak, still, um,
Right.
but that's why, hopefully, you would have, a pastor or someone who would at least, start you and point you in the right direction, to be able to help you and lead you and guide you. Um, that would be a good starting point as well, you know.
Thank you. And Dr. Tony?
I totally high five these beautiful ladies on everything that they said. I think they summed it up beautifully, and wrapped it up completely, in regards to just understanding and knowing your self worth first, right? Leaning into, of course, the clinical piece of therapy, because that is what helps give you the tools. Sometimes it's hard to see what other people see when you're in situations like that. And so it does sometimes take for someone to walk alongside of you that can help give you the tools that you need. One of the biggest things I also want to add is give yourself grace. I remember when I was going through the situation that I was going through, and I would either get encouragement from someone or, listen like someone is doing today to overcomers. The road looks so far away. It's like I don't even know how to get from where I am to where I want to be, right? And you beat yourself up about that because it just looks like you're not going to be able to do it. And so grace is definitely a word that I would say put on the forefront. I think that it's going to continue to, it's going to take time to get to a place of healing and get to a place where you do recognize and see what other people see and what other people say about you. And then, of course, the part about just seeking God, He knows where we are. And the beauty about our relationship with Him is that He meets us right where we are, even if that's in the toughest places. And so, no matter the decision of staying or going back and forth, God will never give up on us. And He will constantly bring people in our lives. He will constantly um, wrap us around so many different things that helps get us to a better situation. We just have to constantly be open to receive that. So that's my biggest takeaway is grace, because it is literally a journey. It does not happen overnight. It is definitely transformative. So it takes time.
Thank you. Ladies, time has come already. We have 5 minutes before Mr. Gregory comes back up and actually gives his closing remarks. Look, I almost said closing benediction. But anyway, I want to say thank you to you ladies. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to actually be able to moderate for you, to hear your story. To anyone who's watching, if you have not heard these ladies' stories, you definitely can go to their social media pages, as well as to Gregory's Motivation Moments on YouTube channel. You can actually see Adenike's interview. You can see Dr. Tony's, and then you actually can hold on, and in a couple of weeks, you'll actually get to hear from Dr. Paulette Harper. And then if you want to hear about Rosalind's story, you actually can go to the Dear Life Actor. So since Rosalind is actually she's a panel guest, and she has not, wasn't once selected this year to be on Motivation Moments. She's probably going to choke me in the end, but I want to ask Rosalind, and I think she knows where I'm going. Rosalind, it's something that we do on her show, and I would like for her to speak to everyone who's watching today and tell them a dear life actor.
Yes, I'm going to kill her later, of course. But it's okay. Dear life after, I never thought I'd see you. Dear life after, through the pain, the abuse, I longed for you. Dear life after, through the sleepless nights, the hits, the punches, the slaps, I longed for you. Dear life after, there would not be a before if there was not an after. Dear life after, oh, I wish for everyone that's had to endure that they come to know you. Dear life after, thank you for the grace. Dear life after, thank you for the love. Dear life after, thank you because you are, I am.
Thank you. Dear life actor, because I am. And the beauty of it is that I look at you all and I see your smiles and I see your glow. So that means that your life is just moving forward. It's pressing forward. Doesn't mean that you forget your past. It doesn't. But it is exactly that. It's your past. A friend of mine said this, that the reason there's a rearview mirror is because you see it. But as you're going forward, it goes further and further and further away from you. And that further and further away from you restores who you are, helps you renew you to who you were before that object was even in the rearview mirror. And more importantly, is that it teaches you that you're walking in the faith of forgiveness and you're walking in the faith towards your fulfillment of what the Lord Jesus Christ has for you. Ladies, it has truly, truly been an honor to sit amongst the dais with you ladies. And to everyone who tuned in, to everyone who chimed in, if you have any questions, if you have any comments for the ladies, they will actually go in and put comments and put their information. Some of their information we will put in, but I know each and every last one of these ladies are available because every last one of them are actually coaches also. So they're available. So for those who are watching and you felt that you could not say anything or you didn't have the strength to say anything, reach out to them individually. They will share with you. They will, and I will tell you, just because you're sitting there thinking that they haven't gone through what you've gone through, I promise you, I know 3 of their stories. They've gone through probably something that I know that I could never survive, or I would still be on couch therapy, trying to work my way through it. So, ladies, again, I thank you. I commend you, and I cannot wait to see what God has for you in the near future, because I know that the favor is upon each and every one of your lives. So now we're going to bring back none other, the host of Motivation Moments, the women's session, Mr. Gregory Bloomfield.
You know, when you hear wisdom like that, you don't clap, you step. Amen. You know, thank you so. I nigga stop laughing at me so much. She can laugh like that because I've known her for like 30 years. Hey, that was wonderful. Hey, were you all blessed? If you were blessed in YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, just put like, I'm blessed in the chat. It was really good information. And can we give a really good, I was going to say, I'm a church boy. I said, can you give a hearty amen? Can you just put a clap or a heart or whatever in the chat for Dr. Kusamo, who did an amazing job moderating. I felt like we switched roles as I'm behind the scenes making comments and all that type of stuff. And it's good to...
You did pay back, but that's okay.
No. The debt isn't paid yet. We got one. We're going to do this again. This was very successful. I thank each and everyone, to Rosalind, to Adenike, to Dr. Melissa, Dr. Paulette, and of course, to Dr. Alonda. Thank you so much. And all of you for tuning in. I just want to give some final remarks. One of the things that I've learned with any relationships, when you're making any major choices in your life, and especially those who have gone through abuse or gone through very terrible situations, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a dating situation, or even a friendship, I'm going to say this again in future shows. There are 5 things you need to do. First thing you need to do is pray for wisdom. The second thing you need to do is ask yourself this question: what is my emotional state with this friend or this loved one or this spouse? The third thing is, can I get the quality of life that God has ordained for me being with this person? Right? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about peace. I'm talking about feeling your love. That's point number 3. Point number 4 is get around some God-fearing people who love you and will tell you the truth and want to see you saved. They will tell you the truth about yourself in that situation and give you godly advice. And point number 5, as I started with point number 1, is to pray for the right decision. And in that, you will make the right choice over your life. I am going to say this again in future episodes, and that's a segue to what the future episodes are. Next week, or this coming Sunday, we know that we've been dealing with we have women guests, with female guests talking about their stories of domestic violence. But did you know that men also suffer from domestic violence as well? So on the 26th of October at 8 p.m. We're going to do this again, but this time with men. And the title is Men Can Be Abused Too. So we don't talk about this a lot, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to deal with the tough conversations. So my guests will be Chris Davis, an ex-NFL player. We're going to have an in-depth solo interview with him this coming Sunday. He's going to be our guest this coming Sunday. But he's going to be a part of our panel. He's going to tell his story of domestic abuse. We also have my good friends as well. Craig Campbell, who is, I've known probably longer than Adenike. He's my best friend. We're going to be talking on the stage. And also we're going to have my boy Donald Morton from the Reman Project out of Atlanta. He's going to be a part of the conversation. And we can't forget Corey Hughes. He always brings the jewels. He always brings the wisdom. He's going to be talking as well. So it's going to be the men talking. You need to invite every man to learn about the situation so we can have honest dialogue about men that have been abused, and we can tackle this domestic violence thing head on. I want to thank you all for joining. And also, if you saw the phone number below, if you want to talk to someone about your situation, you can talk to my friend Jessica Kennedy. She's based out of Maryland. She's licensed out of Maryland and Virginia, but therapists know therapists. She can help you in your state get to the right therapist or the right person that can give you the resources that you need. And that's something that we really pride ourselves in this podcast, not just people talking about their problems and hearing their stories, but giving you solutions and strategies to help you with your situation. If you were blessed this evening, would you prayerfully consider donating to this ministry through Cash App? That's my Cash App right there. And I also have a PayPal. So if you want to give $5, $10, $15, $20, $2, I don't care. I don't have a suit, the Lord didn't tell me to get a number. So I'm just going to say, give what your heart desires. So that way we can continue this ministry. I thank you so much for being a part of this. This will not be the last panel discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. And remember the tagline, be encouraged, be inspired, and be motivated. This is the Motivation Moment Podcast with your boy, Gregory Bloomfield, and my friends. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.